What's happening, y'all? It's me coming back at you again with another vid. I know I'm late on this one, but I thought I'd go ahead and add my 2 cents to the recent passing of Bobby's schoolboy Chacon. And for you modern day boxing fans who have no idea who Bobby Chacon was, we'll sit back and just relax, and I'm gonna give you a brief breakdown on his life and his career. Now, Bobby Chacon was a two-division world champion. He was a featherweight champion who had made about a couple successful title defenses and a super featherweight champion with one successful title defense. He's perhaps well known for his with his wars with Alexo Gorio, his 4-round quadruple, his rivalry with Rafael Bazooka Lamont, which some regard one of the greatest rivalries of all time. That rivalry was a war from the first fight to the last. I'll get into that one in a second. And his bouts with Ruben Alvarez, who's one of the greatest featherweights of all time, or bantamweights of all time, and Hall of Famer, and the guy who actually beat Danny Lopez, the undefeated Danny Lopez at that point, who was also a Hall of Famer. Um, he did have success in the ring. Obviously, making have a string of wins, becoming a world champion, particularly at featherweight. Um, Despite his success, Bobby had he had a lot of personal tragedies that had occurred in his life. First, in his younger days, in the early '80s, his wife Valerie had committed suicide, and it's very unfortunate. But I'm not going to get into all that because that's not what this video is about. It just to point that out that he had to endure that, and his son was murdered in 1991. So yeah, he had to deal with a lot of personal demons outside the ring. But inside the ring, yeah, he was a warrior. He fought fought who he could fight. His rounds. I'm gonna go in a little detail about his wars with Rafael Lamont. That rivalry spawned, from my research during the mid and late '70s, where Chacon was obviously he's a Mexican-born American. You're classified as a Mexican American / Chicano, and Lamont was a pure-born Mexican. And at that time, there was a rivalry between the Mexican American Chicanos and the Mexicans. So that rivalry had it encompassed a lot of social and racial tensions between the both parties. Kind of very similar to how the Jerry Cooney and the Larry Holmes fight was built up at that time. But going into those bouts and those wars with Rafael Luma, the first fight, Luma had won that fight, I believe. I think he won that first fight. He won that first fight by 10-round decision. Yeah, he won that fight by 10-round decision. It was a slugfest back and forth. I mean, god damn it, it was just like these men were just trading heavy punches, and it's like some of these guys were using any head movement in that fight, in the first fight. They were just like slugging it out, just like trying to take each other's heads off. And then the second fight, this fight had a little bit of controversy. I mean, it wasn't controversial in a way because during that time, here's the way how the fight ended. It ended in a technical draw. And the reason why it did is because it was stopped in the 7th round. And Lamont suffered a deep cut above his eye, I believe. And it was due to a clash of heads or an accidental headbutt, whatever it was. And at that time, there were no rules that specified that a fighter who gets cut, if they can't continue past 4 rounds, then it would be declared an automatic draw. However, in today's standards, if it gets past 4 rounds and the fight has stopped due to that cut, and it was due to a clash of heads, then the judges it'll go to the scorecards. Back then, it wasn't like that. So it didn't matter if the fight went past 4 rounds, even though a fighter suffered a cut due to a clash of heads, not by a punch. The fight will automatically be ruled as a technical trial. And what's funny about that in that particular fight, Bobby Chacon was giving Lamont a beating. He was really outclassing him. And, it is a draw. And, obviously he should have been awarded the decision if the rule didn't apply back then as it is today. But it is what it is. But in the third fight, he did get his revenge. He did avenge that loss in the first fight against Lamone. In the third fight, he won it by a split decision. A very, very close fight. Some felt that Lamone won that fight, but hey, it is what it is. It went down that way. In the fourth fight, yeah, this was very, very ferocious. This fight actually went 15 rounds. Very close fight again, like the other three fights. But the thing is those knockdowns in that fight with that I think it was Lamone scored one knockdown in that fight, and Chacon scored a couple knockdowns as well, I believe. And he was awarded that fight by a very close decision based off those knockdowns, which is by Chacon. So that ended their rivalry and their past trilogy fights and whatnot. But some are going to argue that, well, the reason why, before I get into that, we all know now, well, we don't know, and some of you guys don't know. After that Lamone fight, he did go on to win the super featherweight title, whatnot, then suffer losses and so forth. Bobby B is actually in the Hall of Fame now. He is in the Hall of Fame, and some have argued. I had a conversation with several people about this. Some argue that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame due to the fact that he didn't have that many title defenses, and his career was only made up of his wars with Aguariost, his wars with Avalares, and his four fight war with Rafael Lamone. And I beg to differ on that. Some people actually were trying to compare him to Toro Gotti. Nah, I have to beg to differ on that one, because let me tell you something. Bobby Chacon, as I stated earlier, defeated a undefeated Danny Lopez, okay? And I believe he was a slight underdog going into that fight, and he beat him. His undefeated record, and Danny Lopez turned out to be a great fighter in the Hall of Famer. And Ruben Avalares beat him, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, again, that Avalares is considered probably one of the greatest bantamweight fighters of all time, if not the greatest bantamweight fighter of all time. Some would argue that, okay? Arturo Gatti, on the other hand, yes, he's in the Hall of Fame, but many would argue that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he should not be in the Hall of Fame because he doesn't have any Hall of Fame wins on his record whatsoever. Actually, nah, I should take that back. He doesn't have any wins that you would consider as Hall of Fame material. Okay, so there's a difference between the two. But needless to say, we lost one of the toughest fighters in the sport we have ever seen. God rest his soul. And Bobby Chacon, you'll be deeply missed. That's all I have to say. I'm out.